In today's episode with Graham Frost, we talk about heart-centered decisions and making decisions from a place of calmness and not anger. We talk about the value of routine and the importance of expressing emotions. Welcome to Man Quest Define Meaning, where we help men navigate modern life, find their true purpose, and redefine manhood. I'm your host, James, and each week, inspiring guests share their journeys of overcoming fear, embracing vulnerability, and finding success. From experts to everyday heroes, get practical advice and powerful insights. Struggling with career, relationships, or personal growth? We've got you covered. Join us on Man Quest Define Meaning. Now, let's dive in. Welcome everybody to Man Quest Define Meaning. I'm your host, James, and today I have a special guest, Graham Frost. How are you, Graham?
I'm very well, thank you, James. It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
An absolute pleasure. Can we start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and your story?
Yes, of course. So I was born into a very strict church back in the mid-1950s, and we didn't have radio, television, recorded music, lots of the things that young people take for granted. We weren't allowed to do lots of the things that most young people do as a matter of course. Weren't allowed to join the Boy Scouts or anything like that. Everything revolved around going to church meetings, and obviously went to school. And I got to the age of about 11 and began to wonder if this was really the life for me. That coincided with going to secondary school. I had a friend who I wasn't really supposed to have, because I wasn't supposed to have friends outside of the church. And we actually got up to a bit of mischief, and we got arrested for shoplifting in Woolworths at the age of 11. And that was a big thing, because my aunt, who I used to go and visit my aunt's house a lot because I had 5 male cousins and they were like my friends. And she said, I don't think you better come round anymore because you're a bad influence. So that was quite a shock. And then it drove me into myself a bit. And then my family moved to London. I was born and brought up early upbringing was in Essex, and then we moved to London. So I changed, that changed my perspective on life completely. At the age of 13, I moved to London with my family. And then at the age of 17, having left school and started work, I decided that this life wasn't for me. The only way that I could do anything to change it was to leave. So I left my whole family and support network, such as it was, behind at the age of 17, went out into the big wide world on my own. I didn't actually see my mother for 27 years. After that day in 1973. Unfortunately, I slipped into bad behaviour after that. I rebelled quite a lot, and I got mixed up with bad influences and found myself in a young offenders institution called a Borstal at the time. At the time I was 19, I spent a year in Borstal. And unfortunately for me, I found it quite a positive experience. A lot of people will tell you that Borstals were horrible places, but I didn't really experience that. There were staff in the Borstal that I was at who were very supportive and actually challenged me. Said, look, what are you doing with your life? And it helped me to pick myself up and put myself back on track, or find the right track. And I think heart-shaped decisions, which is what I speak about, comes from all the major things that have happened in my life have been as a result of heart-shaped decisions, which is leaving home and then getting back on track again at the age of sort of 19, 20. And then everything was going really well for me at the age of 22. And I got diagnosed with testicular cancer at the age of 22, which was a bit of shock, you might say. And thanks to the church and also quite a lot of positive thinking and not giving up, I'm still here today, many years later, to tell that tale. So that's the sort of story of my early life up to about the age of 25. I could talk for an hour about the rest of it. But then that's what I focus on. With my community interest company that I run is about helping young people, particularly young people in schools, colleges, universities and prisons to make better choices and make better decisions in their life and use their heart to make decisions.
So going back to when you first made the decision to leave, what was it about the heart-shaped decision that really made you really step into that decision?
I really felt like I got to the point where I didn't have any choice. By that time, I was half in and half out of the church. I was working in a company where there were no other members of the church. So I used to go to the pub with them after work and things like that, which I wasn't supposed to do. I was gradually finding myself drawn into the big wide world that I wanted to be in. And then what actually happened was I was offered a job at a bar, a pub in London, which had accommodation with it. And they said, yeah, you can come and live here and work here. So I thought, here's my opportunity. So that was like, I've got to take this opportunity to change my life, which I went home and told my mum. I asked my mum if I could borrow a suitcase. She said, what do you want a suitcase for? I said, because I'm leaving home. And of course, I rang my dad at work and he came rushing home from work and tried to talk me out of it. They wouldn't give me a suitcase. So I went to the shop on the corner of the road and I said to the guy, can you lend me some carrier bags? I don't know why I asked him that because I wasn't going to bring them back. So I actually left home with all my belongings in six plastic carrier bags at the age of 17. And so, yeah, it was just, okay, I've got this opportunity. I've got to take it. It was just purely based on feelings. If I'd thought about the implications of what I was doing, I might not have done it. But I've got this opportunity. I've got to take it and see where it goes.
So for people out there who are perhaps lost and are stuck,
Yeah.
how can they go about using heart-shaped decisions to direct their life?
It's really about how you feel. I think, how do you feel about particular friendships that you might be involved in? How do you feel about relationships that you're in? How does your job make you feel? How does your work make you feel? But I'm not saying that life is all about positive stuff. I've got to a point in personal relationships that I was married in the 1990s and I had to make the heart-shaped decision to get away from that situation because it was probably, by the time I left, it was 90% negative and only 10% positive. So weighing up that kind of thing and how this situation really makes you feel. It's not necessarily about thinking, and yes, it could be about how's it going to make somebody else feel if I do this. But because the heart-shaped decision isn't necessarily always selfish. You have to think about other people as well. But I have to say that my original heart-shaped decision to leave home was completely selfish because I didn't think about the impact on my parents, on my siblings, on anybody else. I just thought, this is my opportunity. I've got to take it. I've got to go.
Yeah, I almost, in that situation, I don't know, because it's one of them decisions that if you stay, you're going to do yourself more damage.
Yes.
And if you don't, and if you go, yes, you are better off, but you're also going to create the impact on your family. But as you said, it's self-decision. Sometimes we need to take them selfish decisions to really step into who we're meant to become.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would not be the person I am today. I'm reasonably okay. I'm reasonably content with who I am today. I would not be where I am today, but I had taken that heart-shaped decision at the age of 17 and several others since. But that was probably the biggest one, the most life-changing one, was to set out on a new path, completely new path.
I think I was just thinking this morning, actually, over my journey, there's things that have come into my life that are no longer in alignment with who I am. And then there's also new things which are more in alignment.
Yeah.
So how can I start to reduce the things that aren't in alignment and to start to incorporate more of the things that I enjoy, the more things that give me that passion, that kind of heart-centered choice.
I think you just have to, you have to say what is actually making me feel good and what isn't. And that does change as you go through life. For example, I used to smoke. I used to drink quite a lot of alcohol different times in my life. I took a decision this year at the fairly advanced age. I'm in my 60s now. I took the decision. I had a health scare. I was in hospital for 10 days earlier on this year. And I just thought to myself, lying in a hospital bed, surrounded by people who were actually ill than I was. And I thought, this is actually happening. I've got to start looking at my health choices and drink less. So I've cut right back on alcohol. It's almost nothing. A healthier diet and much more exercise. And I feel as good as I've felt in the last 10 years because it's easier to pick up a packet of crisps or a sausage roll for lunch. I might do that once a week now rather than 3 or 4 times a week. I'll actually have fresh food and eat a lot more vegetables, salad, that kind of thing, healthier choices. And you do actually get the benefit from it because you feel better. I get up every morning and go out for a walk. And for the last few weeks, I've been doing 10,000 steps a day, and the benefits of it are fantastic.
Yeah, it's one of them things with your body. Your body's a thing that carries you around, and it's a thing that can help you to live longer in a healthier way. So you've got to treat it right.
Yes, and sometimes I fall into the trap of not treating my body. And I'm not saying I'll never fall into that trap again. But at the moment, I'm treating my body well. And I feel great. I feel physically and mentally because that has an impact on your mental health as well.
Yeah. For those people who perhaps find it hard to really connect to their emotions, how can they start to really connect and start to feel happiness, joy, sadness, grief?
I feel happiness. I know how to make myself feel happy. So it could be listening to a particular piece of music or, music's very important in my life. I have to have music in my life like every day. If I'm in the car, I'm driving, I've always got music on. Spending time with people who make me feel happy rather than people who don't make me feel happy. And doing things that you love doing. So I've got 3 things that I love doing. One of them is walking outdoors, and I do that every day. One of them is listening to music, particularly I like jazz and soul and that kind of music, and I have for many years. And I have music playing in the house most of the time. And the other thing I like is watching cricket. I love to go and watch cricket live or watch it on TV, but I prefer to watch it live. So I reward myself for example, I've just been working very hard on some stuff for my community interest company recently. I don't like doing all the marketing and sales stuff. Nobody likes doing that. Not many people do. But because I've actually done it, I've begun to see some results coming through. And so I'm going to have Friday off and I'm going to go and watch cricket for the day. That's my reward. So it's all about how can I make myself feel better than I do right now? What do I need to do? You need to have, in my opinion, you need to have 2 or 3 things in your life that you know are going to make you feel good.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I can imagine throughout your life, you've had times when you've had struggles.
Yes.
Or perhaps hit a barrier or a challenge. How do you personally overcome these situations?
Probably the biggest one example is when I was in a bad marriage in the 1990s. And I was very fortunate because in my life, it just seems to happen, the way things seem to happen for me is that if I'm in a bad place, an opportunity always seems to come along for me to get out of it. And what happened when I was married was that I got offered the opportunity to have some counselling. Now, I'd never spoken about my life growing up at all. Up until I was in my late 30s, I told my partners about it, but not in great detail. And I was able to actually sit down with somebody and talk right through my life. And so, talking therapy is what worked for me in that situation. But now, if I have struggles now, but I'm not saying this is going to work. I'm not saying I've never suffered from serious, debilitating depression. And I know some people have serious trauma in their lives that they can't get over for whatever reason that is. I would say to those kind of people, you have to talk to somebody. Because people say, oh, if your mental health's bad, just go out for a walk. Well, that doesn't work for everybody. Works for me, but it doesn't work for everybody. I can only tell you what works for me, and that what works for me. Okay, I'm feeling a bit crap. I'm going to go. I'm lucky I live in quite a green area. I can look out of my window and see trees, which is fantastic because green's my favourite colour. So I live in an area with loads of trees on the outskirts of Birmingham. And I know that if I go for a walk around the block for 20 minutes, I'm going to feel a lot better. Think things over and try and think about something positive.
What is your idea of a healthy man?
Oh, good gracious, that's a healthy man. I think it starts with what you put into yourself, making sure you're looking after yourself and not eating a lot of junk food. And it is actually quite easy to cook proper food. I live on my own, so I cook every day. I don't rely on taking, and it's just get a slow cooker. They're really easy to use. Now the days are getting shorter and the winter's coming, and my slow cooker will be in use a lot. I'll make soups and I fresh vegetables and salads, and I don't eat a lot of red meat. I don't drink very much alcohol. I used to drink far too much alcohol, but it didn't actually. That is not a healthy way of living. Spend time outdoors doing whatever you enjoy doing. Don't spend too much time looking at screens. I probably need to spend a bit less time looking at screens. But just drink water, drink things that are good for you. Put good stuff into you, including what goes into your mind. Read books rather than watching TV all the time. Try not to watch too much news because I think the news is actually designed to depress us. I know there are terrible things going on in the world, but you do have to focus on yourself and your own well-being, I think. And spend time. I think I haven't spoken much about other people, and I think it is nobody's an island. You need other people in your life who bring something positive with them. I try to spend time with people. I know you will know David Hyner, for example, and David's a good friend of mine. He's also director of my business, so I talk to him a lot because he always seems to have. He's always able to make me feel better.
Yeah. What's your definition of a heart-shaped decision? And do you teach a set routine, a set way in which to allow yourself to go through a heart-shaped decision?
I think it's really all based on how you feel about a situation. All I can do is give you an example, many examples. So I feel like a positive heart-shaped decision. My partner, who I'm with now, we don't live together. I met her about 7.5 years ago, and after about 2.5 years commuting between Peterborough, where I used to live, and Birmingham, she lived in Birmingham, and I thought I got to the point where I thought this is an opportunity for a heart-shaped decision. I want to be closer to her. She wants to be closer to me. So I can't expect her to move to me because all her family's in the West Midlands. So what have I got? What have I got to keep me in Peterborough? I've got friends here, but I haven't got family. I can still go and see my friends. So the obvious thing for me to do is to sell my house and buy a house in the West Midlands and go and live closer to her, which is what I did. And that was the process I went through. So it was like, it's about how some people were a bit upset that I was leaving, but my partner was happy that I was going to be closer to her. I hope she still is. But things like, I had to leave a job. My last corporate role I left in, I think it was 2011. And I was in a job where I enjoyed the work, some of the work. Like I enjoyed probably 50 or 60% of the work, but that was decreasing. So I thought, this is not making me feel good. I'm not waking up in the morning and wanting to go to work because a lot of the work I was being given to do wasn't work that I found fulfilling. I'm not somebody that likes to sit in an office too much. I like to be out delivering. I've delivered training for many years, and I wanted to be out traveling around the country delivering training. But that a bit more and more being stuck in an office. And then I had a boss who didn't like me, because I spoke up and said where I wasn't happy about things. And so it just got to the point where I thought, "Do you know what? This is not making me feel good. I need to do something different. I need to change direction." So I actually left that job and went self-employed. And I've been self-employed ever since then because I was lucky. I don't have a family to support us. I don't have children. If anyone's listening to this and you're in a job or a relationship where you're not happy, your unhappiness is going to affect the other people in that workplace or in that relationship or wherever it is.
So if that was the case, how would they go about making that decision? I know it's quite hard sometimes balancing it up. When you want to leave something, you know it's not good for you, but I think underneath there's a fear.
Yes, there is. One way you can do it, and I have done this in some situations I've been in my life, is literally just get a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle, and make a list of the positives about the situation you're in and the negatives. If the positives outweigh the negatives, then you'll probably be okay where you are. If the negatives outweigh the positives, then how can I get myself out of the situation? How is this making me feel? How can I move on from this situation? What impact is it going to have on other people? And sometimes you're going to have to upset somebody else. I often say to people, the easiest heart-shaped decision to make is to tell somebody that you love them. The most difficult heart-shaped decision to make is to tell somebody that you no longer do love them.
I know how hard it is to tell somebody something they don't want to hear. How can people really step into their own power and be able to tell them? What did you expect would happen, and how did you get through that kind of stuff?
What happened to me, going back to probably one of the worst times in my life, which was the breakup of my marriage in the 90s, it got to the point where I didn't feel comfortable going home. My ex-wife was completely ignoring me. I went through the door. I was working long shifts on the railway in those days, so I would leave home really early in the morning and get back mid-evening. And to be honest, I got to the point where I was going to work overtime. I was taking overtime shifts to get away from the situation. I thought, this can't continue. Even people at work who were friends who I'd known for years were saying to me, "Oh, you can't carry on like this, mate." Sometimes you have to share. I'm very bad at sharing with other people. I always try and work things out for myself. But in that situation, it was just like, I was seeing a counsellor at the time as well, which helped massively. And I had found somewhere else to live. And I went home one night and I sat down and I said to my wife, she was watching TV and ignoring me as usual. I said, "Look, I really just need you to switch that off or just put the volume down. I need us to have a conversation." That was when I told her. I said, "I'm really sorry, but I can't do this anymore. It's having a negative impact on me. You're obviously not happy. I think I need to move out." And it was just, I didn't want to do it in anger. I just wanted to do it as calm, to put it across as calmly as possible. Like making decisions in anger, I think you have to weigh up how it's going to make her feel, how it's going to make me. And yes, I did, even though we lost what we had at the beginning of the relationship, I still felt I still cared about her to a certain extent. I didn't want to, but I made sure that she was okay and as much as I possibly could before I left. And I didn't just walk out in a huff in anger and never go back or anything like that. With most of the heart-shaped decisions I've made, I have considered the impact of my decision on other people. I didn't do it with my family because I couldn't. But then there is a happy ending to that because eventually I was partially reconciled with my family. It did all come back round full circle in the end. And before my parents passed away, my dad only passed away this year. He was 93. But before they passed away, I had reconciled with them, and they were still in the church, and I still wasn't. But we had spent time together and built a relationship later in their lives.
There's one key point you mentioned, that you never made a heart-based decision when you were angry. And I think when you are angry, I don't even feel you are in your heart.
No.
I almost feel it's like you said, you have to calm down in order to make that decision. And yeah, it's almost like heart-based decisions come when you are feeling calm, peaceful, and I wouldn't say relaxed, but ease.
Yes, no, yeah, you're right. Actually, it's often often happens over a long period. My decision to leave home, for example, when I was a teenager, that didn't happen overnight. That wasn't a decision. I just woke up one morning, right? It was over a year. That was from the age of probably 10 or 11. That took 5 or 6 years, because obviously you can't. Not many people would run away from home at the age of 10 or 11. Never even considered that. That would have been crazy. And I thought I was a little bit crazy even when I left at 7, because not many people leave home at 17, even when they get on with their carer. It was like, that one was just like, the opportunity's here. I've got to do this. And yeah, everything went pretty pear-shaped for the first couple of years. But I did manage to, I remember the incident when I was in Borstal, and the prison officer, and Mr. Taylor, his name was, and he said to me, Frosty, he said, "You're not a criminal." He said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "We get lads that come in here." He said, "And we know that there's not a lot we can do for them." He said, "They might come from bad backgrounds and that kind of thing." He said, "You're not like that." He said, "What are you doing here?" He said, I want you to go back to your dorm. We used to have dormitories there. And he said, "I want you to go back to your dorm and sit on your bed and think about what you're going to do with the rest of your life." And I did that. And I thought, he's right. I didn't escape from one bad place to end up in another one, which is what I'd done.
If we go to the Borstal, what did they specifically say and do to really to get you back on the right track?
That conversation but it was, I think for me, really, James, it was about having a routine. And I'm very much to this day actually a routine person. I probably drive people mad. I get up at the same time in the morning. I do the same things in the same order. And when I was in Borstal, I was woken up at 5:30 in the morning because I worked in the kitchen. So I had to get up, go straight down to the kitchen and get the breakfast. I think there was about 200 lads in there. There's about 10 of us working in the kitchen and what have you. And we had a routine. And when we'd finished breakfast, we would go back to the dorm. Everybody else by that time had gone off to do whatever their activity was for the day. We could have a shower and then a bit of a break, and then we'd go back after an hour and and prepare for lunch. And then the same every day was very similar, but you had a routine, you knew what you were doing. And I think we got one day off a week or something like that, where we could, but then I was like, what am I going to do? There's nothing to do here apart from work. You can read. We had a television room, but you weren't allowed to go in there in the daytime. It isn't quite regimented, but yeah, I need a routine in my life. Even when I retire, I will still have some kind of routine in my life. And I think, to me, that's important. It might not be important to everybody, but to me, it's important to have a routine and to have regular things that you do that keep you occupied and keep you positive.
Mm-hmm. Can you suggest some strategies that people can start to utilize to become more heart-centered?
Yes, just focus on, especially men. Men are not very good at expressing feelings, and I am actually I like to think I'm quite good at expressing my feelings. Yeah, my partner has told me that I am. That's always a good sign when a woman tells you. She said, "You're actually quite good at expressing your feelings, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah, I am. I'd like to think so." I think the men they're supposed to be in this sort of masculinity thing, isn't there? Where men are supposed to be strong and resilient and all that kind of thing. And that's all very well and good, being resilient. It's good, but yeah, you're only so resilient. I think we have to learn, as men in particular, to talk to our friends about things that are. I've got a couple of friends that I know male friends that I know I can talk to about things, and they won't judge me, and they won't. I've got a brother actually who I talk to quite a lot, and he talks to me. And for me, it's about expressing things and not bottling things up.
It makes sense. For those who don't know what you do, can you explain what you do and how to get in contact?
Heart Safe Decisions is a community interest company, and we work in schools, colleges, universities, and prisons to help people, young people, and sometimes older people in prison to make better decisions, because most people have ended up in prison like I did because they made bad decisions. And young people these days, there's almost a degree of hopelessness about some young people these days. I want to give young people hope. And there's actually three of us involved in the business. Myself, David Hyner, and Mark Wingfield. Now, I think you probably know both of as well. And I know David's been on the podcast before. I think Mark has.
Yeah, both have, yeah.
And we're also, what we're doing at the moment, actually, we're looking for corporate sponsorship to run our programs in schools, colleges, and universities around the West Midlands and England. We're in quite advanced stages of negotiations with a few companies at the moment. And we're going to have a launch event in Birmingham in November, which...
Nice.
So you're the first person to be told about that.
There we go. Yeah, that's quite a thing, because I know that the way to impact the planet, I think, is through our younger generation.
Yes.
And so I think teaching the younger generation about heart-based decisions, about feeling emotions, about working out what's good for you, making decisions when you're calm and at ease.
Yeah.
I think are all key, great strategies. But I don't think sometimes schools struggle to really teach them.
Well, I think the education, it's not necessarily the fault of the education system, because the education system does what it's told, generally. But I see so many. I've got a large secondary school just along the road, and just along the road in the other direction, there's a further education college. And if you went into either of those two establishments and you said to those young people, do you think you are prepared for life outside school, after school? They wouldn't be. I don't think education prepares young people. I'm not saying it didn't. I didn't leave school ready to stand on my own 2 feet either. I left school in the early 1970s. I had skills that I got a job space away, but I had to learn an awful lot more. I didn't go to university or anything like that. I had to learn an awful lot more. But the young people don't tend to know too much about budgeting. I know a 20-year-old who still lives at home with their parents, and they don't pay any rent, and their parents pay their mobile phone bill for them and things like that. But it's like, why? I might be old-fashioned, but I was the oldest of 6 children, and when I was 14, my mum came home one day with a carrier bag, and in the carrier bag she said, "Oh, there's something in there for you." And in that carrier bag was a Harris tweed jacket, leather patches on the elbows. And she said, "That's for you." And I said, "Mum, I can't wear that." I said, "I'm 14. This was in 1970. I said, "I've got teachers at school that are 60 that wear that sort of thing." I said, "I can't wear that." She said, "Well, it's all I could afford. I got it from the second-hand clothes shop. And it was costing might have been 10 shillings or something like that in those days, 50p or I don't know." Anyway. So when my dad came home that day from work, I said to him, "Dad, I said, can you help me to get a job in the school holidays?" You could do that in those days. I'm not saying that. I was 14 and I was going to work in the school holidays. I never asked my parents for money again after that. So I had that kind of degree of independence.
Yeah.
When I got to know my parents again, much later in life, my mum said to me, she said, "You always were independent." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "When you went to school," she said, "the first day you went to school when you were 5 years old," she said, "I took you to school the first day and went and collected you. And then after that, you said you wanted to go on your own." I don't remember that, but she told me that was the case. Maybe I have been accused of being too independent. Yeah, you do have to be. There has to be a balance. And I think, heart-shaped decisions are about having a balance in your life. Okay, how does this feel? Is this actually is this the right path to go down? Yeah, is this the right, how is this going to make me feel? How do I feel about doing this? How do I feel about this course of action?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Graham. It's been a pleasure chatting to you.
Oh, if anybody wants to contact me, by the way, my email address is very simple. It's graham@grahamthrust.com. And please feel free to drop me an email. I'm very happy to talk to anybody.
When the podcast goes live, I'll get your contact details as well.
Brilliant. Lovely.
So yeah, perfect. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome, James. Thank you very much. Lovely to meet you.
And yourself. Thank you. Bye.
Cheers.